Lucky to have Laura Walter from Wright County, and she works with Wright County Resource and Environmental Health with an approach to homes with high clutter. She's going to speak to us for about 20 minutes, and we're excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm here on behalf of Wright County Public Health, and we're going to talk about some situations in which we are involved in homes with high clutter and what our approach is and what our resources are for individuals who need help. So I'm Laura. I'll introduce myself. I'm currently the Health Promotion Coordinator in Environmental Health at Wright County Public Health. We'll probably say health and environmental health many times, so get used to it. Also, I apologize in advance because public health uses a lot of acronyms. I've tried to not use them pervasively through the presentation, but there will be a couple that you'll see, like environmental health might be EH. But if you've got any questions at any time, I will not be thrown off if you interrupt to ask, so please ask. I first wanted to just touch base for people that aren't familiar with Wright County. Just a little bit about it. So it's not necessarily a metro area county, but we do border Hennepin County on our east side. Much smaller than our metro counties. Populations are a little over 150,000, but it is the fastest growing county in Minnesota. A lot of that growth is happening right along that eastern border, so that border of Hennepin County. And so it's also, a lot of that growth is in really young families. So we've got younger populations coming in and young families coming in. And because of that, we kind of have a mix of populations in our county. So on that eastern side, we have, I won't say urban compared to some of our neighbors, but more densely populated areas. And that western side is very rural still. So as we're putting some of our programming and our outreach, we keep that in mind a little bit, that we've got two different populations that are still both Wright County, but maybe need to be served in different ways. So I know Gail's familiar with environmental health, but I'd just like to touch on the background of it. So environmental health is just centering on the relationship between the environment that we live in our house. We spend a lot of time in our environments, especially in our home environments. So that long-term exposure to hazards can result in lifelong conditions such as asthma, heart disease, cancer, and dementia. Also, I think it's important to acknowledge that there are certain communities like Black, Indigenous, and people of color or low wealth communities that are disproportionately affected by environmental health, and also there's systematic and structural racism and things that can affect the home that you have and your ability to maybe improve that home. So at Wright County, we have a number of environmental health programs. These are kind of our 6 main programs. So we have asthma, we have radon, water testing in the water lab, and do some education around water. But these last 3 on the bottom, the healthy homes, the environmental health complaints is more of a service that's provided that we take care of or in the program. And then we'll end by talking about public health nuisance. You also might hear me throughout the rest of the presentation speak about clients. That's just a local public health term that we use to refer to anyone that's coming for services or programs. So we don't have like a pay relationship there. It's just the term that we use. If I'm referring to a client, it's just anyone that we're working with at the county. So these are the 3 that are related to heavy content homes, or programs or areas where we have clients that have high clutter.
Can you hide? Can you hit the hide?
Oh, can you see that too?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
okay.
So sorry. I thought it was just annoying for me.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're kind of going to work through these 3 programs. In general, it's kind of set up in the most voluntary to the least voluntary, but we'll talk through those options. So Healthy Homes is our voluntary program that's initiated through referrals. So you can self-refer to the program, or social workers can refer. And this involves a home site visit. So if we get a referral, we'll typically call that client and ask them if they'd be interested, talk a little bit about what we do. So it's a trained Healthy Homes technician that is a Wright County employee. Pause this.
Hi, Jose.
No, you're good. Welcome. So typically there's areas of concern that our technicians maybe identify while they're doing a walkthrough of the home. Otherwise, we also, in that referral, people maybe mark they're concerned about mold or they have a child with asthma and they're just looking for information about their house and how to make them healthier. Typically we do a full home visit inside and out, and it's primarily for education. So we call it an assessment, but it's not for legal purposes. It's definitely not something that gives authority or to enforce housing codes or rental codes, and it's not an inspection. So I think sometimes people think it's an inspection. It's not that. The results or the findings, I would say, of this program don't go anywhere except for this. So it's not fair to anyone else. It's solely for education purposes for that client. So the primary goal is education and then connection to resources, depending on what that assessment is. So here's kind of 8 principles that we think of when we think of a healthy home. So keep it clean, dry, pest-free, contaminant-free, safe, ventilated, comfortable, and maintained. So these are when we talk about the principles that maybe we would identify during the visit, these are some of the things that we're looking at. So in the event of us being in a home with high clutter, some of the ones here that we would maybe identify would be keep it clean. Decluttered surfaces are just easier to dust, easier to clean. Keep it pest-free. Sometimes clutter can also create spaces for pests to live. And then keep it safe. In general, when we're talking about clutter here, we're thinking about egress if you need to get out due to fire. Also, clutter can be around things that can create fire. So those are kind of the 3 things that maybe we would identify in this case, but we would also do the whole 8 things. Ventilated also can be involved here, and same with maintaining. So after a visit, if like a Wright County client that did it, the result would be a recommendation letter. So in this letter, it would be just an overview of the principles and how it would apply to your home. So we maybe wouldn't talk about all 8 things. It would just be things that we identified, and also it's a very collaborative process. So the homeowner, the rental, the resident, if there were things that they specifically had concerns of, that would also be highlighted in this letter. And the goal here for the letter is progress over perfection. So no one's house is perfect environment. So just identify areas that could be easily changed as well. If we know that if my recommendation would be to find a different unit, that's not realistic. So it's what can we do with where you're living now, and progress over perfection. So maybe prioritizing access to windows. So can we create a path so that if you did have to exit in the event of a fire, that you could get through? So things like that are typically recommendations in those letters. Also, we're able to provide some mitigation supplies as part of these visits. So depending on what's identified, we have access to some cleaning kits or mops, or if mold or moisture is a problem, a dehumidifier, some fire extinguishers, carbon monoxide detectors, things like that, that if they're identified during that visit, if we can provide those as a recommendation and as a solution as well. And then the other main goal of the visit is to connect to additional resources. So we recognize that there may be things in the home that we can't help with. So connect people to a fix-it-up home loan or something like that. And then also our renters, sometimes it has to do with the whole unit or a structural concern, and then we connect them with some landlord-tenant rights. And then we also take this as an opportunity whenever we have FaceTime with the client to just share broad program resources. So mental health resources, access to resources, healthcare, family services, anything else that public health has. In general, we like to bring a whole envelope and say, take what you need. We don't know always everything that applies to you, and then return. Don't feel like obligated to use any of it, but this is everything that we can offer. So I mentioned earlier we had a little bit of funding for some items. It's not funded in a way, unfortunately, that allows us to pay for larger services. We have previously been able to use mini grants or other temporary funding sources to assist with some of those projects that are identified during this. So I have a couple examples. We did have a client that had a high content home who, after the visit, was ready to declutter. They were ready to take that step. And so we were able to provide the dumpster services. They had their church who was able to provide the manpower. So we kind of partnered together. Unfortunately, that was the right time in that client's life that we could help them with that. Another example was a pest control company. It was in an apartment. There was a cockroach infestation, and they were doing ongoing pest control, that it wasn't solving the problem. In this case, to be honest, it ended up being a lot of client advocacy. They shouldn't have had to keep paying every month if the infestation wasn't solved. So we were able to find another company that could solve the issue and fill the gaps that the cockroaches were living in and things like that solved that issue. So, and sometimes it's just the Healthy Homes as a conduit to connect to clients and to figure out what they need going forward.
Is there a waiting list for this program?
No.
And what's the average wait time?
Right now we're able to schedule. It just depends on like client schedule and worker schedule. But now, like if you called this week, we would be able to get you in next week probably.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other? This is actually, if we're moving on to the next one, so we can stop. Any other questions about Healthy Homes for now?
I'm gonna go sneak a picture because we need them for our.
Oh, sure.
And somebody doesn't want to be in the picture.
Oh,
So Laura,
yeah.
if you would come across like the safety issues that like the carbon monoxide
Mhm.
and fire extinguisher, fire
Yeah.
smoke alarms, I guess.
Mhm.
Would you then, I mean, those are, if something would happen and they didn't follow up with them and then the city knew about it, or the county knew about it, would be.
Yeah, that's a tough situation. We stand by that all of our recommendations are purely recommendations.
Okay, so probably if they're coming to you, they're interested in making
Yes. Typically, especially if we can facilitate it, we do have smoke alarms as well. The hard part about some of that is often, unless it's specified in the lease, often it's like in a rental, it's the landlord's responsibility to make sure. So sometimes the result of this is us having a discussion with landlords about what they need to do.
So is it both, so it's homeowners as well?
Mhm. Yep, anyone with a home. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Would then a landlord be able to reach out to you and maybe their rental person was having a hard time understanding there was like a communication barrier between the two? Would you be a tool for them too, or does the resident have to?
No, absolutely. They can put in a referral. Anyone can put in a referral. It's obviously up to the person we're calling the client to answer our calls and work with us. Yeah. They don't have to. It's a completely voluntary program, but anyone can. You can make a referral to your friend. It can stay anonymous. We can just say that we received a referral. This is the program that we have. Are you interested in the service?
How long has this program been?
That's a good question. That's a great question. In this capacity, like a few years, it's kind of moved around a little bit. Environmental health at Wright County, as like my position, is relatively new. So it existed in a different capacity than this, but I don't know how many. I think like for a long time it was just a couple of people who were trained, and we're expanding. We did more training last year, so. But we're doing our best to balance, obviously, budget and other priorities. But it's nice to have a voluntary program that anybody can participate in.
Is services only available for folks in Wright County?
Yes, for like our Wright County, Healthy Homes is a program that's not just in Wright County, so your county might have it as well. But yes, in order to do this with Wright County, that's part of why we're able to provide some of the other cleaning kits and things. It's just for Wright County. Yeah.
So you mentioned mini grants.
Yes.
So I'm interested in that. So,
Okay.
What type of grants?
Yeah.
What's the maximum? Where did the funding come from?
Sure.
Is this something that's ongoing, or is it something kind of a one-shot deal?
Mhm.
Okay.
So the for the dumpster, it was just the phrase mini grants is just to determine like to use. For example, the Walmart Foundation has a grant you can apply for. That's like a few $1,000s. That's what we consider a mini grant. So there's different funding sources, different foundations that allow counties to apply. So the Healthy Homes program actually applied for that. And we also, that's part of how we provide some of our other items that we hand out too, is they were funded by these small one-off. We apply as a program and then get those grants. So it's not necessarily, in this case, it wasn't something that we applied for, like on the client's behalf. It was funding that we had applied for as a program. There is some other like special in the county, also depending, we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but depending on how else you're involved with the county, there might be other funding sources. So we try to work with those funding sources. So there's maybe like a special fund, or if we're also involved in child protection or adult protection, there might be funds through those mechanisms. It's just that Healthy Homes itself doesn't have, like, it's not funded in a way that says this is our budget to do cleanups or to do large scale projects for the next year. So we try to help with those when we can, but we don't have like a pot of money for that at this point.
The CEC, there's a nonprofit that has fix up loans.
Yeah.
Do you know what the name of that is? I think it's CEC. But they also do that energy squad as well.
Yeah.
So there are no cost loans available for homeowners through some of these nonprofits that can help with these situations. So you probably are familiar with some.
Yeah, I would love to touch base and make sure I have
Yeah,
all of
Community
that.
Action Partnership, I think
Okay.
is one of them as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And for Wright County, we have like it's called Wright County Community Action, and they're the ones that host our like weatherization grants and our energy assistance. So like, that's a resource that we use as well to check there first. And then otherwise the fix it up home loan is where we typically go next, because those are required repayments. But yes, absolutely. Just any sort of thing, if we can identify something that needs broader work, not just say, like, here's something we recommend you fix and then walk
And
away,
then-
and walk away with it. Yeah.
Thanks.
It's the most frustrating part of the job, to be honest, is that we don't always have like a full funding mechanism for everything. So that's why part of it is just connecting to resources, and we can't help it.
I don't have a question, just a comment, but as the county being the fastest growing one in, this area, what a great program for trying to create positive, home, all these things. Is just,
We're trying to partner with some of our other programs too, that are existing, like our child and teen checkup program, to kind of leverage some of those clients that we meet in a different space to also bring into environmental health. So we're still growing and we're young. That's why it's so nice to meet with groups of people and learn new perspectives to inform kind of our future. So we'll talk about that a little bit at the end too. I might need some advice on some things. For that, we can talk more at the end, but we'll move on to environmental health.
Thank you.
Yeah. So environmental health complaints is more of a service than a program. So complaints can be submitted to us through, we have an online complaint form, phone calls, walk-ins. Sometimes I get a fax still once in a while of a complaint. A lot of times it's renters who have concerns with their own spaces, or it's neighbors, friends, family members concerned about a third party. So when we get that complaint, the first thing we do is evaluate it and determine whether or not A, it's a public health concern, or B, maybe it needs to be referred to a partner. And then if it is a public health concern, determine whether it's a public health nuisance. Talk about at the end. Most of these complaints are referred out. Part of it is that Wright County doesn't do our own inspections for food, schools, and lodging. So anything related to hotels or restaurants or anything like that gets referred out to the Minnesota Department of Health, the section that does our licensing. Also building code enforcement, anything to do with structural integrity of buildings, even though it's certainly not healthy, it's not a public health concern. So that would get referred out to the city if it's in the city limits, and then some townships have given Wright County planning and zoning their code is what they would follow. So just depending, we work really closely with the cities. And so just depending on where that is located and the context of the complaint, we might send that forward. And then the other concern that we get often is renter concerns, especially mold and moisture and other public health things, but also concerns unrelated to public health. And we try to help as much as we can, but we're not equipped to do the landlord tenant rights. So a lot of times those are, we do our best to support and give information, but those are referred out to legal aid, the landlord tenant rights handbook, or home line. So we'll talk a little bit about landlord tenants because we've had a huge increase. I think partly because of the growth of the county, we're seeing a lot more large apartment buildings. So in general, it's the responsibility of the landlord to keep that rental fit to live in reasonable repair, and in compliance with state and local health and safety laws. But often, as people probably know, it ends up with a negotiation of who caused what, or what the original cause is. Is it the tenant living in that space, or was it an initial problem with the unit? So typically in these cases, we can serve as an advocate, and we advocate to landlords that, kind of like we mentioned with Healthy Homes, sometimes it takes a call that even if it's in the lease, that they just need a third party to do that advocate, like to be an advocate for them. But without a rental ordinance, which few cities in Wright County have a rental ordinance, it often falls on the client to take legal action and pursue that on their own if it falls outside the building code or our public health ordinance. So advocate when we can, but sometimes we have to report that out. So regarding environmental health complaints, we did have another program highlight. I just wanted to talk about in the context of this space. We were able to recently had a rental client who was in a dispute with their landlord due to high levels of clutter in their unit. And we were able to connect with that client to a decluttering service that was able to work within their waiver. So they had a waiver for cleaning services. At the time, they had a case manager who it was not affiliated with the county, but was new to the topic, and was trying to find cleaners, like just your standard cleaners, to take care of it. And it wasn't successful. And so we were able to connect them with specifically a decluttering service that was willing to work within kind of the schedule of the waiver payments and things like that. So when we don't have a funding source, we try to work with existing funding sources to make it fit their way. So they were able to slowly make progress in their clutter cleanup that way. And we have also previously utilized Connectability, and that's like a third-party organization that connects those supported by waivers with vendors who are willing to work with waivers, so that it can be a good place that we send people now as well. Questions about environmental health? Okay, so we talked about the kind of complaints that don't become public health nuisance, and now we'll talk about what public health nuisance is. So public health nuisance is an ordinance, and it exists to protect the health and safety and general welfare of the public.
And it's a state ordinance.
It is, yes. It's defined by Minnesota law, and it's the activity or failure to act that adversely affects the public. So Wright County Public Health is like the maintainer of that ordinance or enforcer of that ordinance in Wright County. So some examples could include improperly stored waste, garbage, dead animals, insect and rodent infestations, clandestine lab sites, including meth labs, and then the general unsafe living conditions, specifically that affect children and vulnerable adults. So that's our criteria. The most important thing to think about with public health nuisance is, does it affect health and does it affect the public? So a lot of that determination in what is public and what's private. So if a complaint is determined to be a public health nuisance, this is the area where an intervention is required. It's not as fun as Healthy Homes, it's not recommendations. It does require intervention. Education and resource sharing is absolutely still part of it, but action is required. So the owner or occupant is required to abate the public health concern. Typically that timeline starts at 10 business days. It changes depending on risk level. So if there's something that's an imminent threat to public health, we won't wait the 10 days. If it's something that can be worked on slowly and we're seeing progress being made, we can extend that deadline. So the goal is to be, to the best of our ability, trauma informed in that approach, and to understand that cleaning up this public health nuisance might be traumatic, but to balance that health of the public with it needs to get cleaned up, and also understanding that it's hard probably for that individual. So as much as it's feasible, we try to as long as we see progress to let that go. So in the context of an application to homes with heavy content, Wright County, partially maybe due to its rurality a little bit, is very autonomous in its take to public health nuisance. So in Wright County in general, an individual has the right to live how they choose. And if the content is limited to the inside of single family home and there's not like an apartment unit where pests could be moving to the next unit, just like the different signs of pests in an apartment, and there are not any vulnerable adults or children living there, typically we would not declare a public health nuisance, or we would not declare a home with heavy content a public health nuisance. That's Wright County's stance on it. If there are vulnerable adults or children in the home, it could be depending on the content and depending on, as we talked before, like obviously there's levels of content. So depending on if it is blocking a fire exit, if it is causing harm to the children or vulnerable adults, then there might be a requirement to mitigate the nuisance. So sometimes in these cases, we start with, like we get the report, and during that conversation with a reporter or reportee, it sounds like the adult might be a vulnerable adult. They make that report and we let that go through the adult protection process. And then depending on the result of that, we maybe would pursue or not. So if they end up being a competent adult, we're done with the document and move on. And if they do, then we would work with adult protection or child protection to mitigate the nuisance until that this home is safely evicted. The other time that we would potentially intervene is if the home has an abundance of animals such that the health and safety of the animal is at risk. So a competent adult has the right to live however they want, but the animals are also vulnerable in that sense. They can't choose their environment. So if there's species that aren't cleaned up or there's an ammonia level that isn't safe for the animals either, we would usually partner with, we usually partner with Humane Society or animal control or something to move the animals to a safer place or to mitigate that so it's safe for the animal.
Or the Animal Humane Society in June. It was an exceptional tour.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jackie, for arranging that. It was excellent.
We love our animals, and I think it's obviously that's a very hard. Anytime we have a space like that that has a number of animals and we have to make that choice to remove, it's really hard, but we have to consider the safety of the animals. So that's kind of the end of our public health nuisance a little bit. For the future, we are reviewing that public health ordinance right now. We're mostly looking at expanding that ordinance to include language specifically to ingress and egress. A number of other counties have already done this. As I said before, Wright County currently prioritizes personal autonomy in that, but also we want to balance this respect for the safety of our first responders. So if we're asking them to enter a building that maybe they couldn't get out of the back door in case of fire or that they couldn't get through safely, is that fair to them? And also kind of that balance of what is public. So like in general, right now we consider single family homes to not be public, but in reference for if we're expecting our first responders to go in, what does that look like? So that maybe would be a place where we would expand our public health nuisance ordinance related to homes with high levels of clutter that we're not doing right now. So, and the other thing that we're looking at as we're expanding is doing some more events, some broader events to support decluttering. So whether it's shredding events or Wright County is getting a new recycling center, we're very excited. So maybe partnering with them, especially for items that cross over for public health nuisance. So mosquito control is a part of public health. If you have a pile of old tires, mosquitoes love old tires. So that can be a breeding ground for mosquito-borne diseases. So that itself is a public health nuisance. So that would be a chance to kind of merge those two areas with some recycling and by also eliminating the potential public health. So that is all I have. We can do full questions now.
This is just a random one. Are you familiar with candy wafers?
Yeah.
Do you guys work with those?
We have public health is involved with doing some like evaluations and things, but we don't take payment for any services. We don't do that work. But there are other people that do both, and I can connect you with someone.
Yes, and someone who asked us if we accept that. I
Okay.
don't understand what they
Oh,
were
sure.
at first, but it's a community access disability inclusion waiver, and we were open to it, but
Yeah. Are you familiar with connectability? Have you heard of that before? Okay, that might be, I hadn't heard of it until I was like, calling around to decluttering companies that were willing to figure out if I could get someone to work within a waiver. And one of them was like, oh yeah, we already do it. You connected to us through connectability. So they're not sponsored at all or related at all to Wright County. So I'm not officially endorsing them, but it might be a good place to
I am
people.
aware, because last week I was at a home where a junk removal company came to the home to remove some junk. And I know they were paid through the waiver, so.
I didn't know what it was.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
right.
And then-
I think that just says, I think we need to have connectability come and speak in 2026. So, but that's why we're here as a community, is to learn from each other. I know Jose's looking at this model and going, I think that could work. Parts of that could work for Minneapolis. I feel like, I mean, I could feel that, and I'm, because I know you're trying to build the better model, right? And
Yeah.
I love the 3-part model where somebody can enter in without the fear of being removed or hold on or whatever. Like I'm
Yeah, because I think that's.
right. Like I know I have mold. I want to get rid of it.
Right.
What are you prepared to help me do, Wright County, to help me do that? I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, I'd love to hear. And
Yeah. Well, we'll talk
yeah,
later.
Yeah, offline, absolutely.
Does anybody have any questions they're willing to ask on camera? Thank you, Laura, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, go for it. Yes, sorry.
Yes.
And I missed the beginning of it.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause, it's interesting because we're looking at using our Healthy Homes program to handle some of the issues that we cut across.
Yeah.
So, is there, for example, a limit, like on the Healthy Homes, is there like a budget? Is there kind of a top, each project can only get up to X amount of dollars or something like that? Do you have a dollar?
We don't, no. We use that model with our family home visiting. So like they have a dollar amount that they can spend. The way that we view our Healthy Homes program right now is that when we have funding or if we get, just have some grant dollars, we buy and then we distribute as needed and hope that we can, and we don't worry about running out at this point. Obviously, as it expands, maybe we will. Typically, there's main focuses. So like, for example, we have like HEPA vacuums that we give out. If you're getting a HEPA vacuum because that's your main concern, you're probably not getting other things. So it's just kind of a balance of that.
Yeah.
But typically for like those smaller items that we give out related to that, we focus on like priority groups or priorities within that. Same with like the dehumidifier, you maybe don't get multiple pieces of equipment, but if we feel like you need multiple pieces of equipment, we will, at this point, we'll distribute.
When you said the minutes of the Healthy Homes, so
Yeah.
Healthy Homes, like from Wright County, apply to a larger Healthy Homes grant system or?
No, just
Okay.
a third party.
Oh,
Like
okay.
the program
Okay.
itself was like applied for some
Applied
additional funding.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
not, yes, it's
Yeah.
not official funding that way. And we do that. Other places of public health do that for different programs as well. Obviously. goes
Was
to
it
a different level.
in county or like a separate nonprofit, a whole separate?
Yeah, I believe that one was the Walmart Foundation.
Oh,
I don't know if it's like store by store. I know
Okay.
that sometimes they want like local community, but I don't know the specifics of that. We actually got that one before I came to Wright County, so it's just this magic thing that was there. when we got here.
So can any, income level go through this program?
Yeah, we don't do any stripping at this point.
Really?
Brilliant.
Are there programs like this in all the counties that you're in?
A number of counties. I don't want to say all. I don't. You maybe are more familiar with.
So the city of Minneapolis actually has a Healthy Homes program. We focus on certain things. Lead, windows, things like that. And actually what we're trying to do now is we're thinking about how can we be creative with some of these funds? Because the Healthy Homes kind of has fewer strings than others. So we're actually thinking of tying in our weatherization program.
Right.
And so we'll go in and do weatherization. And let's say we've got a clutter situation. We can say in order to weatherize this home, we're gonna have to clean out some of this area. So we're trying to figure out how do we use those dollars to
Legitimately,
actually do that.
yeah. But, I mean, how do you stay within the confines of the rules
Right.
and make it so that you're capable, so it's possible to do what you're there for?
Right.
Under the Healthy Homes Grant. That makes sense.
Yes, and we unfortunately don't cover our areas weatherization that's hosted by Wright County Community Action.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of times where we send people back and forth, so it would be nice.
Yeah.
to Do a little bit
Yeah.
more.
Lucky for us, everything's in one.
Yeah.
Actually, we're on the same, our team is on the same floor as the health department, so
Oh,
I
yeah.
work very closely with them. And we've been trying to improve, because that, health department gets all the money.
Mhm.
So how do we tap into that? So,
Ours is the fire department.
We tap into the fire department sometimes too, for, especially in apartment buildings, it's like broader,
Yeah.
sprinkler system things.
Very
So, yes, we'll call them.
Laura, I think we're going to conclude the recording. Thank you for your presentation. And if folks in Wright County need to reach out, there you are, right on the screen. Thank you so much.